I used to be quite confused about the issue of prayer because on the one hand, we shouldn't, we learned that we shouldn't be selfish, we shouldn't ask for things. And then on the other hand, I've heard Swami say, that, it is right for a child to ask from their parent. But now I feel like I have a better understanding of it. Prayer is not asking for something, okay? This is the important thing. You should not use your mind to ask for something. Prayer doesn't involve your mind, and that's what people, I think that's what really confuses people. This is how I see prayer. When I first hold a thought, it's as if I'm picking up sand in my hand, then I kneel down to the river of consciousness, and then I become one with it. I put that thought aside. I don't worry about it, whether it'll be answered or not or anything. I become one with it to the point of surrendering my identity. Then I open my hand and I let go of that sand into that river of consciousness. You understand?
That's a nice metaphor, yeah.
And when I do that, I don't know where that sand's going to go from there. The river will do with it what it will. So be it. I think people are so afraid of appearing arrogant that they go off in the other direction. The important thing is to know what confidence is. If you know what confidence is, then you won't err on the side of being arrogant, and you won't err on the side of not having it, thinking that that's humility. And another thing about worries is desires, as Swami says, is one of the root causes of worry, because you want things to happen a certain way. I mean, can you think of a worry that doesn't involve that?
That's classic attachment to outcome, isn't it?
Very classic. The important thing is not to stress. The important thing is to put aside the worries.
Are you able to do that?
It's tough, but I become better at it every time I do it. The more you practice it, the better you become. And the interesting thing about gratitude, I used to think gratitude means saying thank you. Thank you is just I see that as a something that has to do with the persona. I say thank you because I don't want you to think I'm rude. But no, gratitude goes way beyond that. When I meditated, and this is when I learned what gratitude really is, I was meditating and I experienced this feeling on the way to the oneness. You've experienced good feelings, and in the process, you experience love, gratitude, and joy, all as one thing, all at one time. When you are happy that you exist, when you are happy that you are God, when you feel the love, which I felt as a magnetic field, when you feel this, automatically that happiness is gratitude. If you are telling me that you have gratitude and yet you're always acting kind of cranky, sad, then you don't have gratitude. It's the blissful person. Bliss is the sign of gratitude. When it comes to Swami, I don't think time doesn't even factor in. I am him and he is me, and I get closer to that oneness as time goes by. That's the only way it factors in. But otherwise, the truth of the matter is, there's no going from here to there. I'm already there.
From the Gulf of Mexico coastal region of Valparaiso, Florida, this is Souljourns' second interview with Dr. Kavitha Hardy. Her insights and lessons learned from her spiritual teacher, Sri Satya Sai Baba of India, are expansive. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in August 2011.
Kavitha, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on Souljourns. I guess the question that really is uppermost in my mind is, how is your spiritual teacher, Sri Satya Sai Baba, still evident, still present in your life?
He is me, I think, is the best answer I can give. I don't feel like I'm far from him. I just have to quiet my mind, and he's always with me. So, I can't really, I guess, explain it beyond that. because, I'd have to use more words if I had to explain something that is separate from me.
He used to say a lot, you and I are one. And I started to really practice accepting that, understanding it, believing it. I got as far as intellectually accepting it. And I really do believe it. But I don't know if I feel it the way you do. How can you tell others who might be like me, who intellectually are there, Sai Baba and you are one, and take it a step further and really put some knowledge, some awareness about that to that phrase?
I go back to that experience in darshan. That's what really started it for me when I became the we. But I understand that experience more and more each day. In fact, I didn't understand it nearly as much in my 20s as I do now. But I think the important thing here is, and we were listening to Muji recently talking about this, and as you know, he's a second generation student of Ramana Maharshi. Mm-hmm. And I like how he kind of describes it, where whatever you're thinking now, you observe. Then whatever you feel at that point, you keep observing. Whatever you think you are, you keep observing, observing, observing. And who you really are is not observable, is only experienced. And who we really are is Swami. That's how I feel. And so that's how I get back to being one with him. When you have to allow yourself to experience it. You have to have that faith that it's going to happen, and just let go of thinking. It's when you suspend the mind that you'll actually experience Swami. And Swami, the way he experiences Swami, that's the important thing. Swami is not this form, this person who carried around his handkerchief and walked among us and everything, although that is one part of his reality. What he really is, when you really experience your real self, you'll experience yourself the way Swami experiences you, the way you experience Swami, the way he experiences Swami.
You said two things that really intrigued me. One, I think I've known about for a long time. All of this requires a huge amount of faith. And I think of myself as being less a doubter every day that goes by, less and less and less a doubter, more and more and more a person of faith. The second thing, though, that's a little bit more difficult for me to wrap my arms around is how you characterize the ultimate you. In other words, observe your thoughts, observe your reaction to your thoughts, observe, be the witness. But you cannot be the witness of who you really are. Tell me a little bit more about what that means to you.
The only way you can be a witness to anything is if the witness is other than you. Do you see what I'm saying?
So you cannot witness yourself.
Right. You can't witness yourself because you are yourself. It's really something to be experienced. At least even when we think we are this body, we can still look in a mirror and look at what our face looks like, right? But when it comes to the real you can't do that. It's just what we are. It transcends, and this is one of the reasons, is it transcends the senses.
I don't mean for this to make up too much of this session with you, but it's very interesting to me. Let's look at it from this perspective. There's two Kavithas. There's the small k Kavitha in the material world, in non-duality, in duality. And then it's the larger Kavitha, the higher consciousness Kavitha, the supreme Kavitha, who's difficult to observe because that's the only observer. So in my mind, I think what you're saying is you can observe the smaller self, smallest self, but the larger self is who you are.
And the larger self, which is what I am, is not Kavitha.
As we know Kavitha.
As you know me. It's not, I cease to have a separate identity at that level.
I would suggest you're saying that this is Sai Baba, this is God, this is Creator, Mother, Father, Being.
It ceases to have name and form. And that's the important part. You have to be willing to give up all of that. And it'll feel like a death, actually, as you're going further into meditation. You experience all this. It's scary. It is scary because you feel like you're dying in a sense, and that's just your ego. The closer you get to it, the noisier your mind can get. In fact, as it calls you back.
And I want to press forward just another ounce. It almost sounds as if you're saying to me, reading between your lines, that you have had at least a momentary experience of this higher self.
I have, and of course, it's not like there's a point where you experience it and then you never go back. I mean, I'm sure that there is that moksha and all that. Now, I don't have much knowledge of that because I don't think I'm there, definitely not there yet. But I have experienced it enough to tell you a little bit about it, although it goes beyond words, of course. Each day I progress a little further to where I can bring that experience out of the meditative experience into my daily life. So there are times where I will get lost in that even while I'm just sitting there watching TV or just sitting in the sofa.
So there's a fragment of you in your higher self at that time.
Right.
You're lost.
Right. What it really has to do with, it's not that I'm going somewhere. It's that I'm silencing this mind. We're always that. In reality, we're always that. But it's when we silence our mind and we stop believing the illusion that our mind tries to get us to believe. You know what I'm saying? It takes in all these signals from our five senses, and all that is just those electrical signals, neurological signals.
And a really silly question for those of us who really don't think of ourselves as being very adept at meditating. How important is meditation in all of this?
I can only speak about my journey. I don't know about every journey out there, but I guess that's the way that Swami started me out. It started with that experience in darshan at a time when I really didn't have that much belief in my own meditation. I realized it was something that worked for some people, but I didn't think it worked for me. And Swami showed me by reacting to me only when I got into that state. Then I realized, oh, okay, so this is the state that they're talking about. That's what I need to achieve. And so that's kind of how it happened for me. Now I'm very busy with the household and the kids and all that. But it is still very important for me personally to be in this state with my God. As often as I can be is very important to me. That's where I am grounded.
And do you try when you're there to rid the mind of thoughts as much as you're capable, or do you focus instead on a thought that might be a mantra, might be Baba's name, might be the word love?
I don't try to rid my mind. I observe it. That's the most important thing. It is kind of like expecting a tiger not to pounce on you, to try to get the mind to stop thinking. That's just what it does. It's just a tool. It's just an instrument that we have to use. So you can't expect it to stop thinking. You do have to observe it so that you realize that you're not that mind. But the other thing you said regarding a mantra, normally I've never been someone, in the very beginning, in my early 20s, I did say Swami's name, and that got me to some point. But more recently, I haven't been into mantras. And then very recently, after we had watched the talk by Muji, I found myself, and it just happened automatically while trying to meditate, I found myself, whenever something arises in me that interrupts my meditation, I just tell myself, observe, observe, observe. Every time I find myself at a different level, observe that.
And that's
too.
helpful.
That helps me. That reminds me. It's just automatic. It's on autopilot. I don't think about what it means. The moment I think of the word, I automatically observe. It just happens.
Kavitha, here you are in this beautiful region of, I think it's pronounced Valparaiso, Florida, on a great bay of water out here leading into the Gulf of Mexico on a sunny Florida day. You have a profound spiritual life, which we've probed before in this discussion of Souljourns, but Baba's physical form is now gone, so how do you model your spiritual life to others who seem to be thirsting for more and don't either know about Baba or care to know about this Indian teacher who was once in the physical form in India?
It is very hard to put Swami into words, as I'm sure a lot of people realize. I'm actually reluctant, excuse me, I'm actually reluctant to talk to people because oftentimes I may not know where they're coming from, what stage they're at in their own growth, because this is can be a lot to take, to understand, to believe. And but sometimes there is the promptings from within, Swami's promptings from within, and I just kind of follow that. So when he wants me to say something at his given time, I say it. And that's when things work out perfectly, because I believe that higher self knows when what a person needs at a given time.
Well, this leads perfectly into the next segment, because you and I have been talking about about certain phrases and outlooks and words, and I thought what I would do now is just bounce some of these off of you to see where Baba takes you with them, because he guides and you're being guided, and now it's an opportunity for you to guide those of us who are interested in learning more about, let's just knock this off, for example, with the significance in your estimation of the importance of experience. You're talking about spiritual or physical experience here? I'm talking about experience versus observation. I was listening to a talk by Swami. This was back in '92, I think, in Kodaikanal. He gave a talk. It's called Talk to the Westerners. And in that he talks about that. And because people are always asking, I'm sure they ask him, the common question is, how do I meditate? Or how do I experience God? And Swami explains it so beautifully in that talk. And that's what really drove home the importance of experience to me, because as we just explained, who you really are, you can only experience, you can't observe it. So Swami says that if you have a glass of water and you mix, I think he says sugar or salt, I forget which, into the water, and he says, and if I show that to you, you can't see that dissolved in the water. The only way to know that it's there is to taste it, which means, i.e., experience it, right? And when he said that, it just it had an impact on me. Swami's saying that and he really means it. So that's the day I decided I'm going to experience it. So being an observer is good to the extent that you're on a profound spiritual path, but for the part of us that we see as material, living in duality, part of that invites us to experience the duality. I'm not sure that's what you're meaning, but that's what I'm hearing a little bit.
Well, I'm sorry.
Part of that invites us, since 99% of me, as far as I can tell, lives in duality. I wish it were different than that, but that's the way I see it right now. So part of getting myself into non-duality is to experience the duality, see what that brings to me, and see where I can go on my own by going into meditation and something else. I mean, does that relate at all?
You can't get there that way. The mind can never go there.
So
the
then
mind
that
will
begs
never
the question,
understand it.
how does a person listening to this get there?
I want to put an emphasis on this here at this point, is the mind is an instrument and it's powerful, but that's all it is. You can't ask a hammer as you're using it, who am I? It just can't. It's not meant for that. And what was the second thing you were saying?
So how would a person use the hammer to help him or her get further along the spiritual path?
Well, the mind can help you to know that, hey, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to, go to a study group or whatever, be around the right environment. It can help you choose, okay, I don't want to say the wrong things. I want to say sweet things and not hurt people. All of that, sure, one can do with the mind. The motivation has to come from elsewhere, I believe. The mind itself is selfish. It's it's always concerned with survival, self-survival, and
Well, you've also
all
talked
that.
in the past about basic limitations of the mind. It can only take you so far because of its limited nature.
Right, absolutely, and so you can't. Your mind is going to do things, have traits that are undesirable. You have to expect that. You can't be disappointed in it just because it does that. But it is an instrument. You have to guide it. You have to decide what you're going to do with that mind. So it will jump around. It will sit there. When you go to a study group, it will tell you, I don't like her dress. Or, gosh, she's, testy today. It will think bad of people around you. It will tell you that you're separate from others. It will, that's what the mind does. You can't expect it not to do that.
And you're not necessarily immune from those traits,
Right.
even if you're on a relatively important spiritual path
Sure.
of inquiry, because these traits are part of our human nature that we're trying to grow through, but until we do, they're with us every step
Well,
of
it's
the way.
part of our animal nature, because a human, as Swami says, human is between animal and God. So we have a godly nature and we have the animal nature. And this I attribute to animal nature.
Part of our human existence has to do with something I've heard you talk about before, the concept of pride versus self-confidence. Now, I don't see that in animals, but I definitely see that in humans.
Well, there are a lot of misconceptions in society today. People don't I think our definition of things has gotten skewed over the several hundreds of years, I guess. I guess it's the Kali Yuga, I don't know. But people, when they see someone who is prideful or arrogant, they think, there's a confident person right there. Or the reverse is also true. When people see someone who has confidence, true confidence, they may see that as, they may feel unsafe around that person or feel intimidated. Another thing I find, and it all depends on which society you live in. Sometimes you can say East and West, maybe it's an East and West culture difference. Sometimes some people think if you should not display confidence, because if you don't display confidence, if you don't have confidence, then that means you're modest, and that means you have humility. That's not necessarily true either. The way I define confidence, and this is very important because Swami always talks about confidence. And I used to wonder, why is he talking about confidence? How does that have much to do with spirituality? But it has a lot to do with spirituality. A lack of confidence is what, it seems to be what motivates people into selfishness, into trying to protect themselves, defensiveness, attack. It's actually, I believe, to blame for a lot of our problems in the world today.
The lack of self-esteem or confidence.
The lack of self-confidence and the confusing of other things with self-confidence, you see.
Being over to see Baba's college students, male and female, for quite a few years now, those we get a chance to know, are just brimming over with confidence.
Well, that was one of my first experiences. I heard Swami talk about confidence, but then when I was around the college students back, in my 20s, I got a chance to observe them. And I found that they don't, I come from an Eastern culture where you have to feel semi-apologetic. Well, at least that's how I've seen people being. They're semi-apologetic for having confidence or appearing confident. Whereas when I saw Swami's college students, they're not like that. They don't apologize for that, and they shouldn't.
Where do you suppose that came from in your culture? The need, or the apparent need, to feel a little apologetic for feeling good about yourself?
I think people are so afraid of appearing arrogant that they go off in the other direction. The important thing is to know what confidence is. If you know what confidence is, then you won't err on the side of being arrogant, and you won't err on the side of not having it, thinking that that's humility. Confidence really I always used to think confidence means it's something you have to acquire, something you have to get from somewhere, but it's not the case. You already are confidence. It's your very beingness is confident. What gets in the way, what makes you seem to lack confidence is when you have all these worries and fears that cover your real soul.
And they rise to the top and stay there for the most part.
Right. So what it really is getting rid of the unwanted stuff, the worries and the fears. If you get rid of that, automatically you're confident. You don't need to do anything special in order to get that confidence. If you're trying specifically to do something to get that, then chances are you're being arrogant. Chances are, because you're using your mind. Your mind is only selfish. You know what I'm saying? When you're using your mind overly to do that and you overanalyze that, you end up being arrogant, and then when you're arrogant you're afraid to look arrogant, and then you err on the other side,
Become
and
even more arrogant.
It's so much so complicated. It's actually very simple.
This plays into what I understand or don't understand about the East in general and Asian spirituality. I'm totally familiar with prayer in the West, especially among our Christian heritage. And yet effective prayer, as I would hear Baba talk about it, was totally different than anything I ever expected. I'm not aware that people in Asia put a great deal of emphasis on prayer as we see it in the West.
I used to be quite confused about the issue of prayer, because on the one hand, we shouldn't we learned that we shouldn't be selfish, we shouldn't ask for things. And then on the other hand, I've heard Swami say, that, it is right for a child to ask from their parent and whatnot. So it's confused me over the years, but now I feel like I have a better understanding of it. Prayer is not asking for something, okay? This is the important thing. You should not use your mind to ask for something. Prayer doesn't involve your mind, and that's what people, I think that's what really confuses people. This is how I see prayer. When I first hold a thought, it's not a thought that I don't have something or I want something. It's not even a desire. It's a thought about whatever it is I'm thinking of. I don't even desire it. I want to say it's something I want, but it's not. I don't even think that I want it. I just think about it. Then it's as if I'm picking up sand in my hand, then I kneel down to the river of consciousness, and then I become one with it. I put that thought aside. I don't worry about it, whether it'll be answered or not or anything. Then I become one with that river of consciousness. And then I become one with it to the point of surrendering my identity. Then I open my hand and I let go of that sand into that river of consciousness. You understand?
That's a nice metaphor, yeah.
And when I do that, I don't know where that sand's going to go from there. The river will do with it what it will. So be it. Whether it'll get answered the way I feel like it should be answered, no, you shouldn't even think of how you think it should be handled.
So do you actually follow through with that during periods of, let's say, not just ordinary stress, which everybody relates to, but occasionally people confront very, very deep stress in their lives? You still don't ask for a resolution? You don't ask
The important thing is not to stress. The important thing is to put aside the worries.
Are you able to do that?
It's tough, but I become better at it every time I do it. The more you practice it, the better you become.
And what's a thumbnail sketch of how one goes about practicing minimizing the stress in their lives? I want to hear this so I can practice it better.
I think first of all, we try not to complicate our lives. We try to live according to Dharma and not go against our conscience. Because a lot of worries come from when we go against our conscience. And another thing about worries is desires, as Swami says. is one of the root causes of worry, because you want things to happen a certain way. I mean, can you think of a worry that doesn't involve that?
That's classic attachment to outcome, isn't it?
Very classic. And this is, what's interesting is this actually leads into something that I've been thinking about regarding karma, because oftentimes people think karma is, oh, I'll just worry about that my next lifetime, you know, whatever karma I'm racking up now, right? But actually, when we worry about, you know, what we want to have happen, we become more easily manipulated by the world, and that's a very easy thing for the world to manipulate. And the reason I talk about karma here is that you accrue karma when you're worrying about what's going to happen. What's going to happen? You know, Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, he said the perfect man does action without being attached to the consequence of without being attached to the results of those actions. Okay, and that's important, because if I'm attached to the results of the actions, what happens is, let's say you say something to me and that strikes me in a certain way and I want to react to it because I'm angry or something, then I react to you. Then you react to me again. Then I react to you. Then you react to me.
So I am reacting to the consequences of my actions.
Right, you're so concerned, like I want to get you to react a certain way. So this is a sense, in a sense, manipulation. You see, so we're so wrapped up in the results that we want to control the results, and that's the whole problem. And if you and I react to each other forever and ever, what's happening, and that's what's happening, I believe, in the world. When you're reactive in that way, and you're not acting but you're reacting, you're easily manipulated by others.
So lead me through this. I'm unwittingly, completely without intention, saying something that seems innocent to me that's terribly upsetting to you. I just, you know, I'm not
like
thinking about
without meaning
without
to
meaning
offend,
to.
right?
And you react. And naturally the reaction of me would be to react right back, either defensively or aggressively or apologetically. How do you envision somebody not reacting in this sense?
Well, in order to not react, if I were in your shoes, I would step back first and look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is, Kavitha's not necessarily attacking you. The bigger picture is, what's Kavitha going through? Is she taking my words out of context? Do you see what I'm saying? You're not just looking at yourself as a center of, because that's what we tend to do when we react. We look at ourselves as the center of the universe. And we don't see the bigger picture that may be involved. Maybe the other person's having a bad day. Maybe they're afraid of something that maybe I can allay their fears.
And maybe I'm having a bad day and really do say something that's a little bit over the line, but
and you
stop
don't
to worry
realize
about
it until
Yeah.
you see me reacting.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be able to see the full picture of that if you didn't step back and think for a moment. And then once you've thought about it, you can actually act the way that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, we become, someone else is our master, because we can be easily controlled and manipulated if we keep reacting.
Life challenges. This is really part of life challenges, what we've been talking about, how to not react to outcome in a way that leads you, pretty much far afield of where you really are striving to be. But again, I say that, we're doing this dance where 99% of us, in many cases for myself, 100% of me was living in total duality, and only a snippet occasionally would see that there's a bigger picture of who I might be other than this material Ted. So those are huge challenges for me, just to stay aware of that. What are some of the other life challenges that you want to talk about, because we've discussed this ahead of time?
Well, I mean, I don't see it as important to talk about my specific life challenges, but what's more important to me is what these challenges, and I've had my share.
We all do.
I think a lot of people who are drawn into the spiritual circle tend to have lots of life challenges.
You think so?
I think that's part of
maybe
the
we're
whole
just more aware
spiritual
of it.
journey. Maybe we are more aware of it. Maybe you're right. But what's important to me about those life challenges is that they give me a chance to practice two things. One is this whole acting and reacting thing we were just talking about. It gives me a chance to get better at acting rather than reacting to a situation. The other thing that it gives me a chance to do is, in those situations more than at any other time when I'm challenged, those are the times that I'm more apt to turn inward. And that's the important thing. You have to turn inward.
And as
Those are the
Dr. Phil would
times.
say, how does that work for you? Does it work for you when you turn inward?
It does. When I turn inward, it gives me a chance to escape into my higher consciousness, because I have to. I feel a tremendous need at that time in order to maintain a sense of peace of mind. You know, and in the Mahabharata, Kunti actually said that to Krishna once upon a time. She said, Krishna, please, I pray that we always have difficulties, because it is in those difficulties that we remember you.
That's where that came from, huh?
I really think that that's how I feel about this too. And that's why I think oftentimes Swami will, when people ask for peace, I think I remember hearing from one of the interviews you did that Swami said, okay, I'll give you lots of difficulties. And I really think that's where that peace comes from. When the difficulty happens, I escape into my peace.
Yeah. Very good. You've mentioned before misconceptions of a Kali Yuga society. And many of us don't even know what a Kali Yuga society is when it comes down to
Well, that's what I
looks.
call it.
Yeah.
I call it that because I think we've gotten so far away from our true nature at this point. And of course, I mean, I think that at the same time we are moving back to our true nature, because, you know, Swami has come into this world for us, you know.
You still feel
but,
pretty happy about that.
I'm still very happy. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that I've lived in the time of Satya Sai Baba, and I'm thrilled at the concept that I will, you know, I hope to be here at the time of Prema Sai.
And before we go on, some people might look at you, Kavitha, and say, well, that makes Kavitha special. I guess I'm not, because Baba never materialized for me. I never heard about him until it was too late. How might you respond to that?
I think we all have a role to play in all of this. I don't even pretend to know the purpose that, you know, Swami has in store for everyone else. You know what I mean? I would have never guessed that I would have come to Swami before I did.
But it is true that his physical form had a finite limit.
Oh yeah.
And it's now beyond that limit for other people who might otherwise really crave his presence.
The funny thing is, I have never been as close to Swami's. I mean, I of course I love Swami, even his physical form, but I've never, as far as closeness goes, I've been closer to Swami in here than I've ever been to his physical form. I can tell you that.
And what accounts for that?
Because he's more than the physical form. I definitely am sure of that. Most of what, the way I've felt close to him is in non-physical, because that's who he is. He's not really that form. But you were talking about misconceptions earlier. There are lots of misconceptions as far as, like, even as far as what is Dharma. People have forgotten what real Dharma is. And Swami always tries to remind us. He says, look within. We ask him any question, he says, look within, right? And can be frustrating. But the truth is, we often think, okay, if I follow tradition, meaning if I do something the same way it's been done for years, then that means I'm following Dharma, tradition. Or if I show allegiance to a certain group of people, then I'm following Dharma. Or we think, what's the other thing I like to say? Oh yeah, if I'm being the nice guy, if everyone thinks I'm a nice guy, that means I'm following Dharma. But Swami never has said that. When you ask him a question, he never says, well, do things the way you've done it for years. He never says, be the nice guy, let everyone say you're the nice guy. He never says these things. He's always talked about self-inquiry. And that's the important thing. The reason I feel it's important to remember this is, in the Kali Yuga, remember what has happened when people try to show allegiance to a group. Like, for example, I'm sure, you know, those who followed Hitler's words, you know, and killed innocent people, they thought they were following a dharma.
Yep.
They were convinced. That was an allegiance, you know, or, you know, terrorists of every background, you know,
And perhaps
blow up buildings, you know, hijack planes. They're following what they think is a dharma too.
So,
And
so
what
the
is
calling
dharma?
is to go through a more protracted period of an inner observation to weigh the consequences of seemingly
Well,
following.
dharma, what your dharma is never going to come from outside of you. If you look outside in the world, you're not going to find it. You've got to do self-inquiry. You have to go within yourself, because there's a part of you that knows when something feels right.
And the consequences of doing something that isn't right, often we call karma, which is a term that I see becoming more and more used in the West. Not just because people are seeing any Indian movies or reading about Asian spirituality, but it's a euphemism for action versus consequences, I guess. How much stock do you still put in that, and how much do you allow that to follow you? For example, Baba always says that no matter what you do, I have willed it, is his response. Does that mean he wills you to do an action that leads to karma for you? That's a trick question.
I think things happen as they happen. I don't see a reason. I think what Swami might be getting at, I mean, this is my guesstimate here because I don't know the context of what you're saying, but it is not us, the real me, who commits a sin or does a mistake. That's not me who does that. Yeah, I may make mistakes, but that is this mind and this body. That's what commits the mistake.
And you are not that mind.
It is
that
when
body.
I might not have I might not have identified with the right. It's like you're at a game, a baseball game, you know, Red Sox and the Yankees. You're basically rooting for the wrong team. You don't realize that you're supposed to be rooting for one team. In other words, you are not the body. You are not the mind. You are who you are, God. And it is not God who makes the mistake. It's not you who makes the mistake. It is that other thing.
Mm-hmm. Which is maybe the biggest
The
lesson.
mind, body, and ego.
That's not who you really are.
That's not who you really are. And that's why Swami says, I believe he willed it, because he wants us to know that we should not be blaming ourselves, I think, more importantly. If you ask Swami for forgiveness, as I have done actually once in an interview where I couldn't understand what he was saying to me, you ask him for forgiveness, and you'll always find he won't just come up and say, okay, I forgive you. He'll laugh at you for even thinking that you need to be forgiven, because to him it doesn't even exist, because he sees you as pure soul. You know, he sees you as himself, as God.
But that's
How can you make a
tricky
mistake?
road to navigate. Living in the human physical duality existence that, as I've said many times, most of us seem to be most of the time, and yet disavowing any ownership of that vehicle, because you're really the permanent, infinite, perfect, loving being of Atma, who you really are.
We just have to remember that the idea that we are this mind, ego, body is the biggest lie. And I'm going to say
I've never
this.
heard it put that way before.
It's the biggest lie perpetrated on anybody. And that's how I see it. I can't help it. I know, I mean, I don't mean to say that other people are liars, but this is the biggest lie, because it has to do with our very identity. And I feel very strongly about this. The more, I mean, it's just, the truth is the truth is the truth. You either accept it or you don't. Either way, that doesn't change the truth at all.
Mm-hmm. So you've come a long way. I can tell by your passion and your zeal, the way you talk about this, and working very, very hard to understand what you just spoke of. You've got a 3-month-old behind me. How old is your son?
Oh, actually, he's 6 months.
6-month-old. How's he going to
It's funny because it makes me laugh because we actually think that we're supposed to teach our kids when actually I think sometimes we have more to learn from our kids because they are pure soul. When we come into this world, we are pure Atma. You know, we know everything that is important to know. Satchitananda, being awareness and bliss, that's what we are. We automatically are confident because we don't have the fears and worries, you know, but it is this world, this society that imprints all these things on us of what we're supposed to be, what we should be, what we should be guilty of, what we should be ashamed of. You know what I'm saying? So that's, you know, I just hope I don't do that to my child, you know, but it happens to everyone. The other thing, and this is so important to understand, this is what I call a structure of identity. After you form all these layers of muck, as I call it, this whole I shoulds and shouldn'ts and judgments on yourself, that happens through childhood and adolescence. Then in your teen years, you start performing this persona over this, like a shell, to hide all this from the world, to gain certain acceptability, and you think that you're making you're learning propriety, but you're covering things up with this persona. And some people have more than one persona. They turn on different personas in different environments, and to some degree, yeah, you can't avoid that. To some degree, it's sort of an interface with society. But what we don't realize, we think we need that so much, that interface. The spiritual journey is the complete reversal of this process. You first have to delve beneath your persona to see what you are ashamed of about yourself. Because you have to know that whatever you think is so shameful about you is really not so bad. You have to realize those may have been imprints that you get from the outside world. It's not really true.
Probably it's not different from anybody else's self-perceptions too.
Exactly. We all deal with this, and that's a very important thing to learn. We try to act like we don't, but we all deal with this. And that's why when people are on the spiritual path, things get worse before they get better, because as you delve through the persona and you're going through these layers of muck, you're going to see all what you think is the ugliness underneath your persona.
This leads perfectly into the last comment I really hope we had time to talk about today, and I think we do, and that's toxic fear. How on earth do I work at, I guess, beginning by ridding it in myself, and then preventing it or limiting it in those close to me whom I love the most, and everybody else for that matter?
The reason I would call fear toxic in this situation is the more you fear, the more you'll have to fear. It adds up. I've seen people who have lost maybe a couple siblings when they were younger, and who their husband passes away. Various things, calamities happen in their lives, and they're forever stuck in this fear that they're going to lose more, that they have lost in the past, and that they're so forever stuck in those memories and all that they end up messing up their health. They end up messing up. They end up losing the people. They forget to be thankful for what they do have, for the people they do have around them. They end up losing the very people that they're afraid they're going to lose. Fear is very toxic. It wreaks havoc on the body, and Swami's talked about this before many a time.
You're a doctor. It sounds like you're saying a good antidote to fear is gratitude.
Definitely. And the interesting thing about gratitude, I used to think gratitude means saying thank you. Thank you is just I see that as a something that has to do with the persona. I say thank you because I don't want you to think I'm rude. Mm-hmm. But no, gratitude goes way beyond that. When I meditated, and this is when I learned what gratitude really is, I was meditating, and I experienced this feeling on the way to the oneness. You've experienced good feelings, and in the process, you experience love, gratitude, and joy all as one thing, all at one time. That's how I experienced it. And when you are happy that you exist, when you are happy that you are God, when you feel the love, which I felt as a magnetic field, when you feel this, automatically that happiness is gratitude. If you are telling me that you have gratitude and yet you're always acting kind of cranky, sad, then you don't have gratitude. It's the blissful person. Bliss is the sign of gratitude.
That's a different yardstick that I've never really considered or heard of before to measure
They're
gratitude.
one and the same.
Yeah. Time for one last observation. And I guess, you know, I might have 5 things to choose from that I'd like to ask, but I feel like I'm supposed to ask you this. This moment, this day, this month, where are you precisely at this time with Baba?
When it comes to Swami, I don't think time doesn't even factor in. I am him and he is me, and I get closer to that oneness as time goes by. That's the only way it factors in, but otherwise the truth of the matter is there's no going from here to there. I'm already there.
And the doorway called Sai Baba that we all walk through, those of us who wish to walk through it, has it resulted in much disappointment for you?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Has the path to and through Baba resulted in any disappointment to you?
I've had, spirituality is not for the weak-minded. Definitely not. And you will, I want to say you will be tested, but it's not necessarily a test as such. It takes away the layers of ego, which is necessary to become one with that. But yeah, I've had my knocks, and and I've learned a lot from them. If it weren't for that, I would not be where I am today.
Safe to say that much is asked of you?
Oh yeah. And I don't regret it one bit. Truth is truth, as I said.
Great conversation as always. Kavitha, thank you very, very much. God bless you, and Sai Ram.
Thank you, Ted.
Talks that are an hour long, and Google will bring in different experts in the realm of science and computer talks. And so we've watched some of that, and one was by the guy by the name of, they were talking about Leonardo Fibonacci, and he was, and everything's, because they were trading and living, because there's a BBC special on India, the 6-part special. Did you guys watch that?
It's really excellent. Yeah.
Business mathematics to traders in Italy, and he passed that around and helped